Inflation is definitely trending down, which makes the Federal Reserve really happy. But now there's a new issue starting to creep up that the Fed isn't so happy about. And this new scenario will probably impact when the Federal Reserve will cut your interest rates. So first, let's talk about the latest inflation report. The Consumer Price Index was released this morning and says for the month of June, overall inflation came down by just a little bit. 0.1% month over month, but it's still up 3% between June of 2024 and June of 2023. And yes, that's for all items and excludes nothing. And one of the biggest contributors to that drop is the price index for gasoline, which was down both month over month and down 2.5% year over year. The price index for airfare dropped more than 5% between 2023 and 2024, and the price index for used cars and trucks was down dramatically more than 10% year over year. Now, on the flip side, shelter is still stubbornly high. That includes rent and the mortgage equivalent. The shelter index was up more than 5% year over year and also up month over month. And after sitting flat last month, food from the grocery store crept back up just a little between May and June and increased more than 1% between June 2023 and June 2024. And yes, that does include coffee, which, by the way, was down more than 1.5% between June of 23 and June of 24. Now, this is what the Fed wants to see. This is why interest rates have been sitting at a 2-decade high for the last year. The whole point is to use the Fed's most powerful tool, interest rates, to bring inflation back down to 2%. By keeping interest rates so high, it forces people and businesses to pull their money out of circulation, which then slows down the price increases on goods and services. But there's a new wrinkle in the Fed's plan, and that is the labor market. After being unbelievably strong coming out of the pandemic, it's starting to show signs of weakening. Now, sure, the latest June jobs report found more than 200,000 jobs were added in June, but it also found unemployment ticked up again. It's now sitting at 4.1%, which is still relatively low, but definitely higher than the lowest rate of 3.4%, which we hit in April of 2023. By the way, before that, we hadn't seen an unemployment rate at 3.4% since 1968. So you're probably wondering, why am I telling you all this? Because the inflation numbers aren't the only ones the Federal Reserve uses to determine when to cut interest rates. They also use the jobs numbers. And since we're now seeing cooling in both inflation and jobs numbers, that could give the Federal Reserve the confidence it needs to start cutting those interest rates. Now, while he won't say when it'll happen, the Federal Reserve chairman did tell lawmakers this week that keeping interest rates so high for too long can do real damage to the labor market and could reverse the progress the Fed has made on inflation. And they don't want to do either of those things. So in case you don't speak Fed chairman, that's his way of saying, we see what's happening and rate cuts are coming sooner rather than later, possibly as soon as September.